Hello and welcome back. So yesterday we ended where the children of Israel were asking for a king, and so in these chapters 9 to 12 we will see what the king that was chosen and how everything kind of how God gave them what they had asked for. So, as we know, Saul was the person who was chosen to be king, and I reflected upon like his selection, like why Saul. God knew how. Obviously, as we know, God always knows how these things work out. So why Saul? Why Saul? Why Saul? And at the end of the day, I guess we'll know why Saul at the end of the day. So let's just keep going before I get ahead of myself. So here are the lessons that I learned. Saul was tall and considered the most handsome man in Israel. Could that be why? No. All the incidences, from the lost donkeys to arriving at Ziph, weren't coincidental as far as I was concerned. Remember the story. Usually, as you know, I don't go into the story because you should have read it too. But then Saul went to look for his father's lost donkeys and encountered Samuel, etc., etc. So I'm talking about those things that happened, and I believe that they were not coincidentally, but divinely orchestrated. God had already told Samuel, about it and that about everything that would happen. So Samuel knew what was going to happen. Now, here's something that came out to me. Saul was from the smallest of the tribes, which was Benjamin, and the smallest family of that tribe. Does that remind you of someone? Yeah, Gideon. So God is still out here using the least likely people to do mighty things, because one would think that if there was a king coming for Israel, or a king for Israel, it will come from Judah. But no, it came from Benjamin. After Saul was anointed king by Samuel, who told him of the expected happenings over the next few days, the things that, God would use to show that he was one that chosen. So when you get there, you'll meet this. When you get home, the asses will be found. The donkeys will be found. Well, depending on the version that you read, will be found, etc. Now meet me in 7 days, blah, blah, blah. And one thing that stood out to me was, it says God changed him and gave him a new heart. Now that shows me that when God is ready to use you, he will give you a new heart. He will change you. He will change your mind, your perceptions. I don't believe he changed physically, but then obviously from the inside. Asking if it now this is funny. As king, but I'd written asking, as because I wrote them so close together. How weird is that? As king, it was Saul's responsibility and duty to submit to divine leadership and God's dominion in order to rule Israel successfully. Now we will learn that this is something that Saul did not completely understand. A month after Saul was made king, Nahash, king of the Ammonites, who'd been terrorizing the people of Jabesh Gilead. Remember Jabesh Gilead? Yeah, where all that nasty business with the Levites concubine happened. Yeah. Made to attack them, and that this was the king who was taking out their right eyes. Like, that is so crazy to me. Like, what does that even mean? So anyway, the message came to Saul at Gibeah. Remember Gibeah? So I saw a lot of places. Sometimes when you're reading the Old Testament, all these names, you're just like blah, blah, blah. But if you listen, some of these places are quite, historic, or symbolic. And he did like the Levites in obviously with the Levites and the company, and he slaughtered his oxen and sent pieces throughout Israel, threatening that all who did not follow them to battle will meet the same fate. And obviously they went to battle and they won. I mean, that was the beginning of Saul's sort of conquest and his, showcasing himself as king. And then we now see Samuel having to step down. So he gave a farewell address because he was stepping down as a prophet because, like I said, this was a period at the end of the Judges, the prophet was sort of leading, and now they had a king, so he had to step back for the king to reign, even though from all indications they were supposed to work together, because the king was supposed to be the sort of military campaign, leading them to battle. But then obviously the prophet had to be the one, consulting with God. In his farewell address, as he retires as a judge, since there was a king now, Samuel reminded them of the great things that God had done for them from the time of Moses back in Egypt. He told them that the only thing that would help them was fear and worship of the Lord, and not rebellion. These will be the only things that will ensure their success, that is of them, the people, and also of their king. Like Moses and Joshua before him, God displayed his power when Samuel called for rain and thunder out of season. And God honored his request. The people were terrified. Although they done wrong in requesting for a king, God didn't despise them. Instead, he had plans to use the monarchy for his purpose, if only the people were obedient and faithful. And this actually was the beginning of the things that I learned about God. And the other thing was that in chapter 12:22, Samuel said, "It has pleased the Lord to make you a people for himself." Unbelievably, rather, because these people were not those people, because of their constant rejection of him and their unfaithfulness. But it didn't change God's mind, because he knew that he was sending Jesus to redeem us at the end of this whole thing. That was the end plan, and all these things had to come together before that happened. And that was very comforting for me to know about God and how intentional he is. So now, thank you for joining me. And tomorrow, I'll be sharing lessons from Samuel 13 to 14, 1 Samuel 13 to 14. And I hope to see you here. See you tomorrow. Bye.